to all of you for being here and starting off your Friday night with some civic discussion. I love that. So I'm Jillian. I work at the San Francisco Standard. I write about small business news there. And I think it's a good question to start if everyone can just go down and introduce yourself to the audience.
Is that on? Yes, okay. Matt Haney, State Assembly Member. I represent Assembly District 17, which is basically the district half of San Francisco.
I'm KATY BIRNBAUM. I'm the founder and CEO of Into the Streets, and we do large-scale outdoor events like Downtown First Thursdays and Bongren Night Market.
Hello. This one's loud. Hi, I'm Jolene, owner of a queer bar named Jolene's Bar in the Mission.
Great, and so I'm going to ask these amazing folks, thank you all for being here, some questions, but at the end, I'm going to open it up to you to ask questions. So think what I'm missing and what you might want to ask. So because this is a panel about nightlife, I thought a fun first place to start would be to hear from each of you, besides your own parties or events, what's the last really great recent night out you had in San Francisco and where?
Oh. Listen.
I can start. It was last week. I don't actually often go out because I'm exhausted doing it for other folks, but last week I went out to Pandora karaoke in the Tenderloin, and just belted my heart out in one of the private rooms, and it was fantastic. I woke up with a little bit of hangover.
I have to say the same. I don't go out much, but I also went to Pandora. I go there pretty often. Yeah, and I mean, drinking, singing, can't go wrong, And their rooms, they have like a bunch of different rooms that are all themed, so little private rooms and stuff, really cool.
Wow, I need the Pandora invite. I literally live on that block. I haven't been there clearly enough. I don't really do karaoke, but I do love to sing when I'm out. And I had a night, I went out, I had a good friend of mine who did an R&B party that had a band, and it was at Press Club. And I think I was singing along with every song. By the end, I thought I was in the band. So I love R&B music, and so that was a lot of fun. It was a special event that he's doing once a month at the Press Club. Super fun.
I love that spot. Not just because I'm a member of the press, it's also just a great spot. I guess I should share mine. I was at Madrone a couple of weekends ago, and it was awesome. I danced, and I hadn't danced in too long, so it's great. I'm starting off with another question that frankly is pretty big, but I'd love to hear each of you just reflect a little about the current state of nightlife in the city and how you think it's changed since the pandemic.
Okay, I can go first. I think we're trending in the right direction. I think that there's a lot of good energy out there right now. A lot of the people who are here in San Francisco right now really do want to be here, and they want to meet other people. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to try new things, and they really love San Francisco. And I think that helps our nightlife when we have that kind of vibe, and it allows for people like the folks next to me to respond to that and to have audiences for things that otherwise might be harder to do. So you're seeing a lot more outdoor events, you're seeing themed parties, you're seeing all sorts of different communities come together and do creative things. And what I like to see finally, I think, is the city and the state responding to that and being supportive of that and wanting to see more of that happen. I think, we had a pro nightlife mayor before, for sure, and now the new mayor also has come in and just been unapologetic about the role that nightlife is going to play in San Francisco's recovery and its future. And so right now, I think actually the vibe overall from what I've heard from people who are visiting or living here is good. We still don't have enough venues. We don't have enough ways that these venues could be successful. It's still very expensive to operate a business here. So there's still a lot of challenges for sure, but we're seeing a big shift, I think, that I feel more particularly this year than even where it was last year or the year before. And certainly the pandemic was really, really hard coming out of the pandemic. So I think we're going in the right direction, but certainly there's a long way to go still to recover from a lot of what was lost during the pandemic.
got some cautious optimism. What about you, Katie or Josephine?
Yeah, I think that it was a bloodbath during the pandemic. I mean, we're going to be real, and it takes a lot to crawl back out of that, I think, for venues. And so there are incredible venues that have managed to stay alive through the pandemic, and so they're kind of getting their legs, and back under them. And I think there's a ton of new venues, which is also really exciting. So I think that even though we just experienced a really rough time for nightlife, there is still this super San Francisco way of dealing with it, which is like just lean in and make it more amazing and more fabulous, and we're still gonna do it. Like, we love nightlife here in the city. We're not gonna run away from it because it's been a couple of hard years. And the other part is, I think if there is, with that, it was a difficult time, and the streets were an outlet for folks, and there is synergy on inside outside like that I've never seen previously. Pre-pandemic, folks just didn't engage on the outside. I mean, it's a lot to run an indoor venue, and I get that, but there just wasn't a whole lot of synergy or dialogue between those two spaces. And now the bars are coming out, we're bringing people to the bars, and it is a really exciting time to see how we can just really reset the culture of San Francisco through those two spaces.
I want to applaud her because you're bringing in people and bringing people to the streets, like that's a big thing that through the pandemic, I feel like, we used to be a city where before that, I would see a trend of like people would go out maybe for happy hour drinks maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and it was just more common to go out during the week, and it's a little more it's a little harder now. I don't see that. A lot of places are now open, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and late night dining is gone and stuff. So I think we are moving in a direction. We bringing more people to the city. I think that I have been getting more creative and things because people are picking and choosing and not just going out just for drinks. They have to go there for a reason because at the end of the day, sometimes they have to take a $40 Uber, so they have to pick where they're going, and plan everything out. So there's some challenges, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
A lot of great points there, some of which we're going to dive a little deeper into later on in the panel. But just to sort of ground this a little bit, I think, there's the obvious thing that's good about nightlife. It's fun. Like, we like to party. Like, it's just great to be out with your friends and having a good time at night. But what is the bigger picture, why it matters for San Francisco that we do have a healthy nightlife scene? What's the impact?
So some of the things for me, I mean, you don't have a city if you don't have young people, and you need a nightlife. You need a really strong nightlife scene in order to actually have young people. When you're young is when you actually stay up late enough to have a nightlife. I feel like we're the grandparent nightlife folks here. And then the other part of it is we're in a pivotal moment on what the economics of a city actually look like. And yes, we have an economic core, and yes, it's going to, it does need to come back in its more traditional forms in some way, shape, or form with office workers. But the reality is also, who knows if we're ever really going to get there again to that full amount of people just coming in 9 to 5. Where else do you make up that tax revenue? You have to start looking into more hours of the day that the city is economically productive, and also more areas of the city that are potentially economically, productive in that way. So nightlife to me is a really, both downtown and then across the city, it is potentially our lever to offset some of the dynamics of losing a culture that really was pushing, several hundreds of thousands of folks downtown Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
It's important to bring it back because it's about human connection, in-person IRL events. It's just, everyone's just been on a screen. Our younger generation needs to get out there because the most important thing is human connection again, right? So people need to feel that and not look at, you know.
Yeah, I agree with all that. You know, it has been a big part of our city and cities generally. There was a study that was done that found that over 20,000 jobs were connected to the nightlife industry, $1.5 billion in revenue. I think, as you heard, it's even more important now. That was studies that were done before the pandemic. We now have a downtown that used to be 9 to 5. City centers used to be much more 9 to 5. They're not now, and we have all of this incredible space. We have people who are here. We have opportunities, and the way that people live, when they work, how they work has changed. And so the role that nightlife or things that happen at sort of different hours, whether that's in the evening or early in the morning or on weekends, is really defining the vitality of a city. And we've seen this across the state. The cities that have thriving nightlife and hospitality sectors are the cities that have come back much more strongly after the pandemic. And I think that's a lesson. And so there's this huge opportunity. And for sure, we need to bring people to San Francisco, not only as visitors, but our lifeblood has been young people who've come here to find community because there are others who share their identity or a place that they can be creative or be themselves. And that happens with others, and it often happens with music, and it happens at night, and that's where activism happens. That's where people decide to go out and fight for things together. It's where social change happens. So I think all of that has been a part of who San Francisco is, and I think now, because of these changes that have happened to our city, it's even more important.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about identity and going out with people for a reason. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride, everyone. Queer nightlife is such a big part of San Francisco. And maybe, Jolene, you could talk a little bit about what you think makes queer nightlife in San Francisco so important and special.
I mean, we're known as like the hub, right? You know, it's kind of wild that a lot of people come to San Francisco and they're like, whoa, there's only 2 lesbian bars in San Francisco, or 3, you know? It's important because a lot of them disappeared during the pandemic. I think, I don't know the true number, but we're around like 25 to 30 in the US. And only 3 in San Francisco. It's kind of wild, you know, in California. And it's important to keep those spaces open because the rest of the US is looking for that and they don't have that. So when they come here, they need to make sure that, you know, they have a space, what they're seeking.
Yeah, and I think also too, you know, when they come here, and a lot of people come here for that. It's like people, like, again, it's Pride. I think we're expected to have some large number of people who are coming to San Francisco for Pride. So it's...
Yeah, they'll plan their whole year around it.
Yeah. Either of you two have additional thoughts on that?
I mean, I think there are also a lot of synergy between queer venues and, you know, activism, right? Like this is out of the bars into the streets. That is the name of my company. Into the Streets is very much from Harvey Milk and his rallying and organizing in bars, and it's the hotbed of where we can come together and finally be seen, feel safe. That's the place where you can actually politically organize. If you don't know that you have numbers, if you don't know you can have any strength, you're not going to go out there and you're not going to fight for what you need.
And we'll talk a little bit about the into the streets part, because that is one of the shifts that I feel like has felt really present to me as an observer since COVID, is that we have so many more successful events on the streets. Castro Night Market, the next one's June 20th. Obviously Bunker and Beats and Downtown First Thursdays, which you organize, Katy. Why do you think, like, it's worked so well in this moment to have, you know, outdoor parties in a way that San Francisco never really did before?
I mean, it is the pandemic. It was the worst of times, and it has allowed for some of the best of things in a long while as well. And you know, it is both of those things. When I first started in street events in San Francisco, it was about a decade ago. I wanted to do night markets for years, and everybody was like, no one's gonna go to a night market in San Francisco, it's cold. Everyone goes into the venues. Never would work in a million years, ever. Like, that was across the board, the message. Absolutely could not be successful here in San Francisco. Having to essentially have your entire social life outdoors for 1 to 2 years, the only safe way to do that, it changed us all of us. All of us have a different relationship with outdoor spaces. All of us have a different relationship with the streets. And that, it's one of those things. I don't think, none of us wanted to have lived through the pandemic. No, there was a lot of terrible things with that, but we would not have the street culture that we have now if folks were not forced to live their lives in the streets for 2 years. And that is, like, hands down, that is definitely the basis of it. On the other side of it, like, yes, we train folks for 2 years to be able to be outside. I think there is, like, a lot more awareness around the dynamics of being indoors and outdoors, and there's a lot of people who actually do prefer to be outdoors these days because of that kind of knowledge and shared experience. And again, on the other side of it, now we're ready to be in the street, and it's really fun having a cocktail outdoors.
And this is kind of another question to you, but anyone else can chime in too. I liked what you were saying earlier about the dialogue between the outdoor party and the bars feeling stronger, and it's not just one or the other, it's kind of a fluid thing. What does that look like in practice, and how do you make sure that a party like Downtown First Thursdays is also, going into local restaurants and bars?
Yeah, it's definitely, the intent and the mission of the producers. And so with that into the streets, and the Civic Joy Fund, who is our presenting partner there with Downtown First Thursdays, the intent of Downtown First Thursdays was to help brick and mortar businesses downtown. And so we explicitly chose a space that actually had indoor venues, and we worked with them, and it was hard. These folks are not ready to get out in the street, and it's a totally different thing to operate in the street than it is to operate indoors. But we held their hands, we helped them get outside, and again, we selected a location where we knew that there were venues that people could go to. And so, I think it is being really intentional about it, and you have to work with each other. You have to support each other, and like on the other side of it, we held their hands, and they also, are showing up and supporting us and going out to the public hearings and doing all the things, because we are in it together.
And you said, Jolene, like that you are excited about maybe trying out a street fair type concept. Why is that, as someone who has a church-lane indoor bar, like exciting to you?
Well, that would help our business as well, but doing something, just more geared towards queer women, and having like a Sapphic Pride on another day that's not just Pride weekend, I thought would be really cool, Castro fairs, I'm really far from the Castro, so I don't really get included in that. So, I'm close to Mother Bar as well. So I was thinking we can all kind of team up with also, there's other lesbian-owned bars like Mother Bar, Propagation, Arcana, and all come together as bars to, have our bars there, showcase what we can do. We can do some fancy cocktails. We can make it really cute and just do something really solid for women. And highlight where my bar is actually like a really perfect spot to block off. I actually got the permit, so we're gonna do it on September 6th. But it's a perfect little block, food vendors, everything, cute. So I think visibility, getting people more out into the streets, it's a good move to get more people into the city as well.
I love it. I will definitely check that out. That sounds amazing. Matt, one of the things, having just acknowledged at the beginning that we're all kind of old, and so maybe we will not be the ones using this most, but Matt, AB 342 is something that you spearheaded. Tell us a little bit about that. And you know, what are the goals? What's been the opposition? Why do you think this could be the time that we actually get bars open till 4 a.m.?
Well, I get to report some good news, which is that it passed off of the assembly floor this week with 50 votes. No iteration of this bill has ever gotten anywhere near 50 votes. Usually it squeaks off barely and actually hasn't passed out of the assembly at all in a very long time. It's gotten out of the Senate once or twice. Actually, Scott Wiener, God bless him, when I first got to the state legislature, I couldn't carry bills because I came in the middle of the year, and so he said, hey, you know, you can floor manage a couple of my bills. So he gave me safe injection sites and 4 a.m. And we passed safe injection sites to the governor, and he vetoed it. But the 4 a.m. bill, I brought it up on the floor, still sort of not entirely sure how this whole process worked. I knew I needed 41 votes, and he told me we had 41 votes. We put it up, and it had about 26 votes. So from going to that 3 years ago to now having 50 votes for it, I think it shows sort of how the thinking, even at the state level, around these issues has changed, how there's much more of an embrace of nightlife, how some of the conversation, even around the concerns related to drunk driving and some of the sort of demonization or sort of stigma involved with nightlife things, you know, has changed. The state legislature also has gotten younger and more diverse, and there's a deeper or more direct understanding of all of this. So there's a lot of things that have changed that are positive. I still think it is ridiculous that we have a one-size-fits-all policy where every single venue and everywhere in the state, no matter if there's a big festival or if it's a big downtown or it's during the Olympics or the World Cup we have coming, that they all have to close at the exact same time and have last call at the same time. So that principle still remains, and they need to change that. What we did differently is this version is called hospitality zones, somewhat inspired by some of the zones that we've done here. And it would require a city to designate a part of their city or several parts where there's it's appropriate, where there's some concentration of other, you know, hotels, convention center, etc., and designate that area. And then within that area, only on Fridays, Saturdays, and state holidays, they could extend at their discretion till 4 a.m. And that concept, I think, has helped to address some of the opposition that's there. The biggest opponents to this before were Mothers Against Drunk Driving and CHP, the California Highway Patrol, and both are neutral on this bill. So there's some positive signs that suggest we might be able to do this, but I think that you know, not everybody's gonna go out to 4 a.m., not everybody's gonna want a 4 a.m. permit, but if we can have some set of venues here that are successful to 4 a.m., that is going to have a lot of ripple effects on late night dining, on other bars, on other venues, and have a lot of positive effects on our entire nightlife culture. And it would be something that I think San Francisco would do, and a number of other cities would embrace.
Yeah, and just to throw it to you, Katy and Jolene, like, let's say it passed. We get tomorrow, 4 a.m. is a go. Saturday night's tomorrow, perfect, yeah. Saturday night, we can stay up till 4 a.m. and party. What are you considering as a bar owner that would make you decide whether it would be, if it was applicable to you, like something that you would do or not?
I mean, my first thoughts are like, oh my God, I'm never gonna sleep. But, you know, it would actually lift a lot of stress that I have been dealing with ever since I've been in the nightlife industry, you know? Like, I've been bartending since I was 21, and it was like, my manager screaming in my ear, get those drinks off the bar, it's $1.55, are you crazy? You know, and like telling all the security guards to like rip drinks out of people's hands, like it was just a wild show, you know, and it's kind of like that now still. I still live in that fear, you know. I'm like, and I don't want to yell at my staff. I'm like, come on, you guys know, come on, get the drinks off. So, you know, you don't know when there's going to be, you know, an ABC person like undercover or whatever it is. And, you know, I would like to have that option to be say like, oh, actually there's like a good 75 people here. They're enjoying their time. Let's stay open for another half an hour. Are you guys all down to make some money? Yes. And that would be so much more chill. You know, so yeah, I'm for it. I'm for the 4 a.m. Absolutely.
Katie, obviously you don't run a bar, and your parties outdoors that seems cold. Yeah, that doesn't really work. But generally, you talk to a lot of folks in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, part of what we're trying to do is like we end our events at 10 o'clock for various reasons. A lot of them are kind of around compliance and like, you know, having all of the riffraff in the street is like, I think a lot of the opposition to things like this. So having us kind of wrap up around 10 o'clock is a good thing in terms of the street part of it. But the intent is then we throw folks into these venues, and so again, it's like a very nuts and bolts thing to me. It's more hours for folks to actually make up the revenue that they are in the hole, because just like that's the reality is every single venue in the city right now is deeply in the hole. Like it's and they need this revenue to get out of that, and then actually to be able to grow or do the things that they want to do and have more creative parties and venues and all of the things. So yeah, we like more hours for them to be able to recover.
And let's just to zoom in on that. Everyone's in a hole. Like, what if you had a magic wand that you could wave, that you could change something, whether it's a policy or something about San Francisco vibes, I don't know, whatever it is, that you could help make a more amenable environment for these bars not to feel like they're in a hole? Like, what would you do?
I don't know, there's a lot of things. I have to pick one.
I mean, you can do a couple.
I mean, in order to get there, to have us open till 4, we need people, right? And in order to have people, the cost of living needs to go down. Like, honestly, like my rent just went up $400. And I'm like, I'm not making more money, guys. And, so I feel like I'm kind of handcuffed to my business now because, yeah, I am in a hole like everybody else. And so cost of living going down, if transportation, I mean, if we want more people coming in the city, then BART needs to run later, Caltrain and stuff like that. And in order to run later, we also need the safety, security. So there's quite a few things I wish my wand would do.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, just even the basic, like, getting venues, just some cash would be an incredible thing that I think, again, would just, it would take the pressure off of folks. But the scale is huge, and it does need a magical wand at this point. The scale of how many venues there are that are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt right now is enormous. It is millions and millions and millions of dollars. So that would be a short-term wand, like that would just reset everything. I think that would be beautiful. Kind of a deep, weird, wonky thing that I would do with the wand is to soundproof residential buildings around existing venues and all future venues to make sure that any residential buildings are fully soundproofed around that, because most of the situations that folks run into it's pressure from neighbors, and either neighbors that didn't know it was going to be they're going to be living next to a club, or they did know but they thought that they could change the neighborhood, into a direction of not having nightlife when they moved in. And I cannot tell you the number of venues that I've seen shutter because of noise complaints, or just struggle because of noise complaints and not be able to get permits for live entertainment and all that kind of stuff. So that's my deep, weird, wonky magic wand.
Those are all good. I was going to say housing, transportation. I would add 4 a.m., but I'd add one more, which is if we had some way to really support artists and pay artists to make art and make music and be DJs and all of this. Another side of this, which is all of the people, of course, who work at nightlife venues and bars, and how hard it is for them to be able to survive and live in San Francisco. But also, all of this requires people who make art and who are creators and who are DJs and musicians, and I think that's also a big part of this. made me think of this because we're now working to try to save a program that the state had just launched, and then Governor Newsom zeroed it out in his budget, which provides payroll support for small performing arts organizations. And that sort of approach, if we were able to do that for all of these folks who are artists and creators, I think would have a huge impact on our nightlife and the overall experience that we have.
Yeah, and with that, and sort of, I kind of love the wonky thing that you said, Katie, because I think, let's take away the magic wand, loved the magic, now we're gonna talk. Sadly, we don't have the magic. Is there one or two things that you think San Francisco could actually concretely change? And Jolene, in like, it doesn't have to be just thinking of this one, could be even like when you first opened, like something San Francisco could do just to make it easier for nightlife to succeed here.
Kind of what I spoke about earlier too, like, you know, the 2 a.m. thing, that scary thing, because, you know, I did have that incident, you know, like the nightmare of my life. It happened my first year opening, and, you know, understanding that, like, yeah, 2 o'clock, we're trying to get everyone out the door, you know, and so if you say 2 o'clock, we're actually ending at 1:30, actually, you know. 1:30, 1:45, we should start taking drinks and try to get everybody out of the club by 2, you know? So a little leeway on that, you know, all of the inspections we have to do, all of the fees we have to pay for all the permitting stuff, you know, it is really tough. That was like the hardest opening up. There are some serious things, but there was a lot of fees that I just didn't understand. You know, like, there was another $500 fee. I'm like, you were here for 5 minutes and you told me to change one thing, and I have to pay $500 on top of what I need to fix. It's just not realistic, you know? So, just kind of looking at the fees, I guess. Yeah.
And I know that is something that Mayor Lurie has said, is trying to find ways to make those permitting processes less agonizing and onerous, and hopefully not a lot of fees that you don't know what's involved, but we'll see if that actually ends up coming through. Either of you two have another thought that you want to add to that?
I wonder if they'll do this. I don't know if this is the right sort of structure, but it addresses that in some ways. This sort of concept of a nightlife mayor or nightlife czar or somebody, and somebody who you really can go to, whose job it is to advocate for nightlife and help make things easier. We sort of have that, I guess, in Ben. Well, we have 2 Bens who sort of do this. When you talk about nightlife, and you say, "Oh, talk to Ben," they say, "Which Ben?" Ben Blyman, who's on the Entertainment Commission, and Ben Houghton, who basically does nightlife for OEWD. But I think something like that, some structure where you really know that there's some set of folks in the city who really do have your back. I think the Entertainment Commission has overall shifted to be very viewed as much more pro nightlife, but to have sort of a one-stop shop for that level of support, I think could help.
Yeah, I mean, some of, like, specifically on the event production side, outdoor event production side, some of the things that we run into is, like, we do live in a city, and unfortunately our housing is not very well soundproofed, and so people do, oftentimes it's not a majority of folks, but there is a couple of very, very angry, loud neighbors that do not want, every single event in the city has to go up and figure out how to navigate 2 to 4 angry people in order to have events for between, you know, 500 and 20,000 people. But it's like 3 to 5 angry folks that are like the roadblock. And so, you know, I don't quite know, we are in a city, we have to accommodate a lot of different needs, and that is a difficult thing to navigate. But I think to that, like, could there be more bright line sort of directives for agencies to follow? Can there be some bravery around that of being like, yep, we're gonna make you mad, and we're just gonna have to accept that some people are not gonna love this, but move forward with confidence and purpose and not dragging, because that's what ends up happening is like it's months of grinding and trying to get somebody to get on board with it, so you can push past 2 to 5 people that are just screaming.
Almost ready to open it up to you guys, so if anyone does have a question, start thinking how you want to phrase it. You all know how the sausage gets made. You're behind the scenes and seeing it. I'm curious what you've heard from your patrons, just the customers. If people are like going out to these bars and parties, what do you think they would change if they could make themselves feel more likely to want to stay out and party more? Like, what do they need?
Kind of the same, you know, like if cost of living was down, maybe they would throw more bucks at the bars. Maybe they would go out 3 days a week. You know, if cost of living was down, maybe they would drop more tips for the artists. You know, the money would go around the city, and I think that's just, at the end of the day, everybody just needs a little bit more money.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other part of why these street festivals are actually so successful right now, is folks are there. Everything's a lot closer to the bone than it has been previously, and it's hard. And this allows people to have a full night of an experience without spending a ton of money. And so we're providing the entertainment for free, so the venues don't have to pay for it. And the $20 that they do have to spend on that night is going to go into a venue. And so I think just like folks just don't have a whole lot of discretionary funds to be, you know, throwing around. And so having that free programming does just help whatever money go back into those venues.
How your
Questions? What do you want to think about?
For you.
Yeah. It's my work.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what I want? If I had another magic wand, I want to walk at night with headphones on and listen to music and feel completely safe. Will that happen in my lifetime? That'd be nice, you know?
Yeah, that's very real. I sometimes do one ear, but never both.
They clap.
Yeah. Are there any hands raised? I will keep going if not, but yeah. Do we?
They only want to talk. You know, what guy?
Hello, my name's Phil. I live next door in Noe Valley. One issue for regarding the hospitality scene is that there has been a trend among younger people down who are drinking less alcohol, specifically beer and wine. Spirits are still fairly popular, but even then that's trending somewhat downward. But most of it is like social media influence. If people aren't drinking as much as a societal change, where do you see like how nightlife can accommodate changing tastes in that regard?
We have there's a lot of brands that do non-alcoholic things. We do a lot of like non-alcoholic alternatives. They have their different like vodka, rums, whiskey, and all that stuff, and non-alcoholic wine, and actually it sells, honestly. I have big groups of younger kids that come in, and they still spend the bucks on these non-alcoholic drinks because they're actually good, and not just a soda, you know, not just a ginger beer with bitters or whatever, like a Gatorade or anything. We have there's a market for it.
And part of what I am super proud of and I think is very effective about some of the outdoor spaces is all ages spaces that are also open at night, like this kind of forced silos of like, okay, if you're not 21, you can't go into this venue, and that it kind of forces like this feeling of wanting or needing to drink more or whatever else, or if your friends don't drink, you're not going to go into that 21 plus venue. So like more in general, like all ages spaces, what I'm seeing is that people feel more comfortable being in that space where there's somebody drinking and there's somebody not drinking right next to each other, and then there's families and kids running around. Not to say that every bar is going to be that exactly, but I do think that is It's an interesting thing that I'm seeing is there's a lot of parents that like having a cocktail while their kids are running around, but and in that dynamic, more people feel comfortable sharing space. And again, they're still buying stuff. They're buying drinks and things, and just non-alcoholic drinks.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's like you can actually create more spaces in some cases for people who don't drink by allowing people to drink in some cases, because you don't separate and segregate in such a way that you sort of normalize it. It's a place where somebody does want to have a drink, they can do that and have this great experience with all these other folks who don't, different ages. I mean, I think that we're getting past this. We used to have these street fairs and festivals where they would like put all the people who drank in a pen, kind of thing, like rope them all in. I don't think that was really good for anybody. It didn't. If you didn't want to drink, it didn't make the overall experience. Your friends or your family had to go in there, you point at them and laugh at them. That's not the kind of experience I think if you're not drinking that you want to be a part of either. So it just sort of normalizing those kind of things. Also, we haven't spoken much about this, and not to say if you don't drink you should do something else, but also cannabis is something that I think is a huge opportunity for nightlife, for hospitality industry. I passed a bill to allow for cannabis cafes, which will allow people to eat and drink and consume cannabis, non-alcoholic drinks. So, but they can also have music and comedy, and again, you cannot consume cannabis as well at those places, but places that people who want different types of experiences and might not even want to be out around alcohol at all, I do think that we have other types of things that we need to build out, and I do think that cannabis continues to be a huge part of our sort of hospitality culture and industry here, and I think will increasingly be so as part of our nightlife.
And I'll just add one more thought. I feel like there's been a big surge in low ABV cocktails at places too. I feel like when I'm out now, if I'm going out on a Tuesday, I will be at the bar, but I'll say, oh look, that one is only, I don't know, whatever percentage, like it's advertised to me as a low ABV cocktail, which I love. Help. Oh, thanks.
Sorry. I have a clarification question. When you said that there are a few angry neighbors, is it legislation that is blocking these from getting approved, or is it more fearful public officials who are scared of whatever backlash or something that might come?
More or less the latter. I mean, I think it's the legislation is what allows the framework for those folks to be part of the process in a pretty significant way. But it is definitely a lot of hesitation and concern around folks who are in the public sector of like making that decision and having to move forward with it. And I mean, to be fair, like I'm very sympathetic. I understand why they're terrified. I mean, these folks are relentless and they're mean, and it's intense to deal with. And so I get it. But it is definitely the latter.
And I think we have a kind of loud voice in the room problem that's similar to what we see in like housing policy and other things, where the folks who are the most concerned and they're showing up at the meeting and saying this place is terrible and it's hurting our community and everything are not often representative of how everyone there feels. There's a lot of folks who like having the venue there, who go to it, who think it's important it's there, but they're not necessarily the ones showing up at the meetings. And so we sometimes have a similar problem with policy making as it relates to entertainment venues, where the 5 people come in and they're saying, I can't sleep and this is terrible, but there's 100 people for every 5 of them who love the place, and then because there's 5 of them, they bring the venue in and they tell the venue, well, you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all this soundproofing, you have to change your hours, you have to do all of these things to make these 5 people happy because they're here in front of us. And so I think we have to align our policies similar to the way that we're sort of realigning our housing policies, so that we're not being always responsive to the person who files the appeal or shows up at the meeting. Because what ends up happening is, if for that small business there's such unpredictability that at any given point someone can show up and say, you got to change something, you got to put some different thing in, it's going to cost me all this money, and it's an unsustainable business. And I think we've come to a similar recognition around that as it relates to housing, that I need to know what the process is, I need to know when it's approved and how it's approved, and once it's approved, like, let me run my business or let me build my housing. And I think for nightlife, the unpredictability of who's going to show up and force you to do something because they have a microphone creates a lot of costs and has shut down a lot of businesses. Like, I just can't afford to do what one person wants me to do.
Kind of all of them.
Okay.
This might be more from Matt, but sort of what's the likelihood of, or is it possible to just have some sort of like unenforcement regime, like with ABC? You mentioned, we talked about permitting. I've seen how like Eli's lets get shut down in Oakland because of permitting, police enforcing noise ordinances, and it's kind of silly stuff to be wasting money on. Well, is it possible to just have some sort of non-enforcement of these things, the same way we do with like mushrooms?
I'm going to be careful with what I say because the camera is on right now. But I will say that there is some separation of who enforces certain types of laws currently in San Francisco, at least. And for example, the San Francisco Police Department does not view it as their role to enforce certain types of hours-related things in many cases. So I think many of us might, because there's one very close to where I live, where every single weekend night there's a huge line down the block.
Is it Pandora?
No, it's not Pandora. I'm not going to out anybody here. Huge line down the block every single Friday and Saturday from 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. and the police station is a block away. And so you're going, well, that's clearly, what do you think is happening there? And the police don't really involve themselves with that. And I think that they view that as the ABC's responsibility. So there is some of that happening now, and I think it's the right thing to do, to the extent that there are certain things that the ABC has set a rule that San Francisco has not. That's not our thing. Let them enforce it. And maybe that in the interim, in reality, in the interim, that is kind of how a lot of these late night, after hours type places operate. There are still times though, and the unpredictability and the uncertainty means that at any point somebody could come in and shut them down. So that's really hard to do. So I'd like to have us actually have laws that people understand and can follow and enforce that are reasonable, but right now they're not reasonable, and so people have to find ways around them. And thankfully, unlike in the past, the SFPD isn't coming around and kicking down doors when they see somebody walking into a place. Generally, some people would say maybe they do in some places, but generally they have more of a hands-off thing, and I hope that they continue that.
Hey everyone, I'm a server of a horse feather. I've been serving for 3 years, and it gets scary at nighttime. How are we going to protect these hospitality workers if the bill is passed who do get off at 4 a.m.? A lot of my coworkers don't live in the city, they have to commute to the East Bay. How are we going to help them and protect them if this is passed?
Well, I think it is a big issue currently, as you said, and part of it is that a couple of things. One is, if it does pass, the city will have to have a safety plan around it, have to look at how to make sure that we're increasing public safety resources in certain areas where it's happening. It also, I think it's a part of the reason why we're really concentrating where it will happen, so that it's in a particular zone where hopefully there is more public safety resources and more visibility and lighting and all of those things. But I think this really is a big issue. I do think part of the problem that we have though is that because there isn't, and I know we talked about this is a 24-hour city panel, because there aren't a lot of people out late at night, because there aren't late night dining options, and there's other venues that are open, it is a lot more isolating for the ones that are open. So I guess again, in a sort of counterintuitive way, if there were more that were open, there were more people out that actually, and it was concentrated, that would actually increase safety. And that was part of what we've seen with the outdoor areas. So I think that one way to do it is to have kind of nightlife zone type areas. You see it, for example, if you've been to San Diego, like in the Gaslamp area, right? area where it's well lit, there's a bunch of venues that are open, there's people walking around, that actually helps a lot with safety. In San Francisco, we have very few venues that are sort of all spread out, and then that, I think, creates more isolation and fear and security concerns, safety concerns for people who are working at those places and visiting them. I don't know, I don't find them big, but.
I mean, I'll just add as a former person, former bartender, waiter, transit, like, I mean, also like not owls, but like, nope, I can actually get home at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Something that I'm very, very worried about, and in terms of like, well, all of nightlife, if we don't have transit, we don't have safety on the streets when people are getting out of bars. And I don't know how the patrons are not going to be able to get there and get home, and the workers who make them the places that they're a destination, they're not going to be able to get there and get home. And so, I mean, transit and/or the loss of transit is an existential threat to nightlife.
I'll do the last question, if that's okay, and then we can wrap it up. I was hoping, so this panel, as Assemblymember Haney said, is about the 24-hour city. So I would love to hear from each of you, what is a 24-hour city you love outside of California or outside of the United States? And what aspect of it would you want to bring to San Francisco?
The first and like one. I was just in Seoul, and it was amazing. I have not had such good food at 4 a.m. ever, probably literally my whole life. It was really great. So the concentration of things was big. I was one street where there were so many bars and restaurants, and so that would be my short answer. My funnier answers, they also had all these photo booth places where you could put on silly props, and that was a really fun way to keep your night going.
Well, I'll say New York. New York maybe is our one truly 24-hour city in the U.S., and I think it's because they have great transit. I think that's a huge part of it. You know that you can get around at any hour of the night, and there are other people who are doing so as well. But you also see in New York that people work jobs at all hours, and that's true here as well. But you know, you have more opportunities for the people who are working at different hours to be able to go out and eat and go out and see their friends, and people get off at different hours and end up, you know. So I think all of that, being a walking city and a city with transit, allows, you can really see how that allows the 24-hour nature of the city to come out. And so, but if there's one other city that I think could do that, I think it would be San Francisco. So I think that we can learn a lot from what they've been able to do.
Yeah, New York is my answer as well. I mean, it's, you know, it's definitely transit. I do think it's really important, like the combination of, you know, there's venues, but there's food. Like getting food in the middle of the night is so fun, especially if you're really hungry and maybe you have been drinking. Transit is really, I mean, that is why, I mean, that's the biggest kind of difference I feel like between going out in New York and going out here in San Francisco. Is like, how the hell are you gonna get home after 12 p.m. actually here, or 12 a.m. here?
Yeah, New York is so fun, you know? It's just getting a slice of pizza or whatever you want to do, you know? It's that freedom. You feel free. It's amazing. And I am going to Japan after Pride for my birthday, and my friend just told me, you can do that. You can drink all day, all night. I'm like, not gonna do that. Maybe I will. Maybe one of the days. But I'm excited to see that, you know, and the safety. They said it's really safe. You can walk around and drink. So, looking forward to that.
Great. Well, that is our time. Thank you all so much. Thank you.